Well, the TSA, I'm not worried about. They're staffed up and ready to go. The issue we should all be looking at is the FAA. So air traffic controllers, there is a shortage. We've known there's been a shortage for years. The Department of Transportation has said they're in the works towards backfilling those positions, but there are certain places like Newark. Yesterday, Newark had a ground stop, not because of weather, but largely because of air traffic controllers and staffing issues. So in general, our air traffic control network in the United States is way behind our industrialized peers, very manual process, very dependent on humans, and there's just a huge backlog. So that could be a thorn in our side. Plus this weather system, as we all know, weather systems can upend the entire air traffic system. So far it's looking good today, but definitely keeping my eyes on it.
That pilot had a sweet mustache in the VO that we were showing.
It was good television.
You got to trust a pilot with a good mustache. I wonder about the permanent subcommittee on investigations, Brian. You may have seen that Richard Blumenthal said their investigation in Congress found that airlines use algorithms to set seat fees, and they can change based on the flight, but also the passenger. Have you heard of that before? It seems insane.
Well, this is really interesting, and you can't blame the airline industry. I think every industry is starting to use advanced algorithms to target consumers on social media. I know, because Instagram knows my profile and the type of clothes I buy, I know I'm getting served certain ads. I'm like, I think these same pieces of clothing are probably being offered to other people for less. So I think that's a trend that's going to go on in every industry. Delta actually in their investor day recently announced something even more potentially concerning for consumers, is that they're currently testing 1% of their airfares. They have an Israeli startup called Fetcher that's doing dynamic AI-driven pricing. And when I went on the Fetcher's website and tried to look around, basically they're trying to do just that, understand who each individual air purchaser is, and instead of serving one fare to everyone, that they will use AI and I'm sure the treasure trove of data they have on consumers. So if they know you've got more money, could they be serving you higher fares? Delta didn't disclose exactly what this test is, but they said it's been very successful, meaning they're extracting more money from each and every person buying tickets.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating to see what comes of that. I do want to switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit more about Delta. You mentioned them, and I interviewed the CEO of Delta alongside Tim Stenovic, along with the CEO of Wheels Up, which is this private aviation company. They have a partnership, Delta and Wheels Up, and I think it's a really interesting model and an interesting sign of the times that Delta is trying to maybe get a little bit deeper, be more exposed to what's going on with private jets right now. What do you make of that dynamic?
Yeah, well, Delta bailed Wheels Up out. Wheels Up was in a tough position. Most of those private jet startups have failed miserably. At the top end of the spectrum, the net jets have done extremely well, and the super premium private jet space, that industry is booming. But trying to get premium consumers who are used to paying $1,000 for a domestic first-class flight, and it's interesting because Delta is the most on-time airline. So in my opinion, if there was an airline to team up with Wheels Up, it would be one of the less reliable major airlines out there. But there needs to be a bigger integration and education, I think, because the gap is still so wide, even between getting a small Wheels Up propeller jet and there's really not that much integration. If you buy Wheels Up packages, you can earn Delta Elite miles, but it's, in my opinion, still a pretty loose integration. And I think Delta needs to do a little bit more to say, hey, look, these flights might be canceled. You can book a Wheels Up instead. That could be revolutionary, but I haven't seen anything that innovative happening with the partnership.
Yeah, we'll see how it evolves. I mean, Delta owns close to 40% of Wheels Up, but Ed Bastian was clear that he doesn't want to own the company completely. I know that Matt has a ton more questions, but I want to sneak in a question on JSX, which is an interesting concept, of course. There's other people on the flight. It's a charter jet, but you go to a private airport, such as a Morristown, you get on, you skip, the typical rigmarole of the security line that you would get at Newark, and then you get on a flight with, 30 to 40 other people, and it takes you to your destination. What do you think of that model? Do you think that it's viable?
JSX is interesting because it's not quite a private jet. When you get on the plane, it's sort of like a little bit of a more roomy regional jet. But as you mentioned, the key selling point is avoiding the big terminals. You can go and fly pretty much semi-private. They're also amazing with dogs. So I know a lot of my friends who have dogs who do not want to check them in the hold fly JSX because of that. Their route network's a little wonky. They don't have those nonstop coast-to-coast flights. I have friends who fly from the coast and they have to stop in Dallas, which is not exactly ideal. And it's not really that premium of an experience. I find ExoJet pretty interesting because that's a service that flies beautiful private jets between Florida and New York and to places like Aspen and the West Coast. And that you're getting that private jet terminal experience, but you're also getting a big, nice seat on a big private jet for not that much more than a first-class ticket on airfare. I mean, still probably double, $2,500 New York to Miami, but that's doable versus renting your own wheels up jet for $20,000. I think most people would say, hey, I'll do $2,500 for me and my spouse, $5,000 total, versus getting my own small jet, which just doesn't make that much financial sense.
Katie, you have a hairless cat.
I do.
Named Catrick.
I do.
And you're not allowed to bring the cat on bark. I feel like that's obvious, right? You can't bring a cat on a dog airline.
They discriminate, but they can fly on JSX.
On JSX, that's interesting. So I have a bunch of questions. Brian, my wife writes in and asks, she's like, oh my God, you have the points guy. What's the best search engine to find award tickets across multiple partners?
Yeah, so Point.me, I think, is the industry leader because it's point.me. And if you have an American Express card, it's free. Point.me/Amex, and it'll tell you which of those Amex transfer partners you can transfer your points to. And the key here is it actually links up with airlines, so it'll tell you what's available. As we all know, with credit card points, if you try to buy business class tickets, it's usually 1 cent per point in value, not that great. But if you can figure out transferring your Chase, Amex, Capital One points to partners, you can fly for a fraction of the cost. So yeah, there's a couple of other ones out there. Roam, ROAME.travel is another one of these search engines. But I think Point.me is the industry leader. They're also integrated. If you have the Built card in the Built app, it'll let you use Point.me for free.